And here we go. Music is on, heads are bumping. It's Wall Street
Sure.
Beats on the last day of the month, July 31st, 2025. Nadine Terman, I'll be your host for the show. I've got Jeff Macke here on my left and Kevin Bakes Baker on my right. I guess theoretically, if we were sitting in the same room, but lots to talk about, and it's not going to be just Meta and Microsoft. So, Mackie, I know that Ben reached out to you yesterday because he probably told you that we were looking at a short on Starbucks. So, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the quarter, the fundamentals, and please talk about. I was like laughing because it's like we're talking about 2028. Does he really get that like much of a hall pass? Tell me what you think.
You know, I think it's a hard stock here. It's a hard long, it's a hard short. And he does get kind of that much of a hall pass because what was underestimated is just how poorly this thing had been run for about 5 years going into it. I mean, we took kind of America's third place for coffee, you hang out, we pretty much had established what Starbucks was. And then we spent 5 years jamming everyone onto an app that everyone hated, but Starbucks got to preload it and use it like a little piggy bank. We treated the customers like crap, and they had endless debates over whether or not it was okay for junkies to use the bathrooms. All of which is just insane. All of which is just like, are you guys honestly kidding me? Like with this being a debate. So, what Nickel has going for him, a couple things. One, people love him because he's a charismatic, good-looking guy, and he also turned around Chipotle. That second part's super important, and that's why he's getting the pass because he's spending money. And frankly, just on the numbers, I was right there with Ben, and that's what makes it such a hard long because the numbers are kind of ludicrous. We don't know what they
Yeah.
can earn. We don't know what the real potential is. But in terms of what he's fundamentally doing, he's going straight smart guy business school, the best of the business school stuff, which is not a lot of the crap you learn, but the stuff that's actually useful in terms of how to turn this around, how to make the culture work, how to improve it by simple things like putting in metrics that every store can understand. I've worked retail before. I'm a big proponent of that idea that, man, if the CEO walks in, what two things do we not want to happen, or he's going to end up firing the manager right here on the floor? Starbucks, and that's what Nichols doing. He's saying, listen, it's 4 minutes from order to delivery. We're going to make a cleaner menu. We're going to have faster, cheerier turnaround. We're going to stop treating the customers like an adversary and make this place comfortable. They turned into all the joy of a methadone clinic with people just lining up to get their caffeine, and with 20,000 units, they effectively had kind of a cultural monopoly on the coffee experience. And that opened up the bros of the world. It opened up a lot of different competition that they didn't need to be involved in there. So, in terms of a short, you can short it on the economy. There's better ways to take bets against the economy. You can short it what you can't short it on, I guess, is the important thing is next quarter or this quarter.
Right.
The comps were not good. It's
Right.
Nickel was brought in to replace the last team because they turned in numbers that were so atrocious that they were just unthinkably bad, and the comps are still negative. That said, he has a good answer for that, which is we have
Right.
20,000 units. It's going to take a while to come in here and establish
Yeah.
this. And in the meantime, they're not going bankrupt. They have the money to do it. They're spending the money in the right places. And as I said, it's I get kind of the headwinds that they're facing on this, but I also think, as I said, there's just better ways to bet against the economy than Starbucks.
All right. But I gotta ask you what he's spending on, right? I don't as a customer, writing my name on the cup is not as important as a lower price, right? So they've really gouged over these past few years. The one thing I didn't hear is reducing the price. I heard cheerier, writing my name on the cup, hopefully faster turnaround. They're going to be adding labor to shepherd people during busy times, and then product innovation, right? And innovating to where other people already are. Do I need protein in my foam? That's not really why I go there, but maybe there's a segment that does, and that's going to attract them. But it's not giving me cheaper price, which makes me not go there as often, certainly per day or per week or per month, right? It's gotten
Right.
so expensive that you're like, really? Like this, it's water. At the end of the day, it's water and a little bit of oat milk or whatever I'm putting in it, right? So is that is what he can do now? Like if he had done this a few years ago, I could see it. but are we at the point with Luckin coming in and other competitors, right, who are also looking at price? Like, is it going to be a tougher slog where he's at today, or no? Is it a differentiated enough experience, or I guess change that the loyalty or other factors are going to make it a win for this company?
Well, they've lost loyalty, and that's why the turnaround's going to take longer than people had originally anticipated and kind of hoped for. They beat the loyalty with an absolute baseball bat.
Yeah.
The order fulfillments with that app, they were up to like 75% or something. The last team
Wow.
thought that was fantastic, and that's just like, my God. And I would argue that you were paying for the price is the premium experience. Not that they write your name on the cup, but that it's fast. It's fast. You know exactly what the coffee's going to be, and it arrives there not necessarily with the biggest smile on your face, but you just have things like a clean store, a clean menu,
Consistency,
better
right.
food offerings, and so it's
Yeah.
consistency. People are willing to pay more for that. If you walk, if it was about price, they lose to every diner on earth that gives you just, hey, top that coffee off for you, hun.
Like,
And it's just absolute swill, and you get caffeinated as you can. But that's really who they'd be competing with on price. So if they can't get a premium, that's a problem. But in terms of price tweaking, he just has to change the place culturally, and he can do that by example. And that's really why Nichols getting the pass. His reputation at Chipotle is great and whatever, but how we got that reputation is because he's the kind of guy who's going to come in there and lead the place. He's unambiguous about what that message is, and that's how you turn this around. If you and I started from backwards and said, how can we make this chain work again as an investment? We really wouldn't start with price. We wouldn't start with this. We're going to be a discount coffee shop, because they tried that. They tried that with, the order pickups where they had a bunch of units that were just going to be basically coffee windows. They didn't run them very efficiently. They provided absolutely no value add. That's a classic business that you compete with on price. I mean, that's like Tour de France guys grabbing a water bottle on their way by.
mhm,
You just kind of you just grab your coffee
right.
and take it. You're not going to pay a ton for that. But it's they're getting rid of kind of the weird response to Bros reaction they were getting. Starbucks been a couple of
Right.
years trying to go with Instagram friendly offerings,
Yeah.
grenadine and just crap that kind of really
Whatever. Yeah.
pops on the gram. No one gives a shit about that. They're serving
Right.
American junkies. They're big, huge caffeine in large doses that they're familiar with. So they will about Starbucks coffee. The consistency of what they're giving you is terrific. And that's kind of what you're paying for, and why you wouldn't just go to some random coffee shop where you don't know what to get. People bitch about the Starbucks coffee, but it's cromulent. It's pretty good. And if you can serve it in a nice place without a filthy bathroom, without just kind of bums hanging out with managers who feel empowered rather than kind of surly, that goes a long way. I worked in stores before. It goes a really long way to not have entire work staff that just hates and doesn't have any respect for management. And that's the culture he's trying to turn. It'll take a couple quarters. I don't think it's. I want to see comps turn positive. Now, my theory is that the new CEOs, especially kind of glamour CEOs like this, they get 4, maybe 5 quarters. He might get 5 quarters of
Right.
earnings that he owns, before the honeymoon is over. And so the difference between last quarter, which they reported and missed, this quarter that people wanted to buy, and then they sold it on the open because the numbers just didn't support
Yeah.
the idea of chasing it up to
Right.
100. But it was that he told the story, he articulated the story better, which is what you would expect as a guy's digging into the job and he's
Right.
out there shopping the units and
Yeah.
doing what he
Right.
should do, which is just it's a tepid, that's a lukewarm cup of coffee of a buy thesis. And I'm not really
Right.
arguing for the buy here. I'm just saying there's better shorts out there. I mean, it's because I hear you on the valuation, I hear you on all that, but I think
Mhm.
the numbers aren't going to matter that much as long as you have a better story.
And let me push back on the Chipotle idea for a second, because Chipotle had an amazing turnaround until recently, and a lot has to do with price, right? You're kind of a $19 burrito, as I've been, going on about for several quarters now. Like it, I would don't want to have. I don't want to spend it. I don't want my kids spending that. There's a point at which you're like, there's other stuff, right? There's other stuff I
Right,
can do.
right.
Maybe and in this case, like brewing my coffee at home or whatever it is. But in the burrito example, obviously other restaurants or like. So again, like, is there any takeaway from that will to the coffee land, or is that really separate? Do you think of that as like a separate
Did you,
issue
if,
now with our culture?
I listened to both of those calls pretty carefully, and it really kind of illuminated the value of what Nickel was bringing to the party and just kind of what good CEOs do. Chipotle is sort of being run by non-CEO types, for want of a better
Yeah.
term. It's people who will argue that we don't get enough credit for the value that we're providing, which is Latin for we think the customer's wrong, which is
Yeah, right,
just
which means
not
like, yeah, wrong
just a
approach. Yeah.
batshit approach. Absolutely, just a crazy way to go about your business. It's like we're going to run 500 unit, and they need a bunch more stores because convenience they think is a big issue. I don't know about you, but it's not that hard to find a Chipotle. If I want a Chipotle, I mean that's all kind of crazy. And so they're immediately sort of running in the wrong direction. Spent a lot of time congratulating the team on these great results after they reported comps that were just abysmal and
Right.
kind of just a lot of excuse making and nothing that said, how we're going to turn. Again, when these companies reduce
Yeah.
themselves to this is the economy's fault type of thinking, you're screwed. Let's just go trade the bond market or something. Let's go trade almost anything else. Why would I possibly want to own a company that the economy has to be perfect or we're not selling any burritos at all?
Right.
It's
Are we
just
are
nuts. They haven't even
Is
tried a value
Chipotle
menu.
still a short? Is Chipotle still a short
I
or
think
no?
so.
Okay.
I think it's a foundational short until they're moving in the right direction. I mean, it's with all these things, entry matters, and so they're not going to be coming out with a ton of news. It's going to fluctuate with the market, but as it gets inflated, if we were talking about Starbucks at 105, I would argue that would be a trading short. Chipotle, I think, is just more of a kind of investment short until they just get their act together and tell me how they're going to stimulate sales. Because as far as I can tell, and as far as their messaging is just no absolute dead perfect wrong, just 180
Okay.
degrees away from the way they should be going. And that to me makes us short. With Nickel, with the amount of credit he gets, it's going to take more than sort of a quarterly miss. He's obviously taught the streets and
Mm.
did it in no uncertain terms, and that isn't a new message from him. His message of
Right.
listen, we're not running this for earnings for the next 18 months. That's been consistent right from
Yeah.
the start, which is to his credit. You don't have to be a Mensa guy to come up with that as an idea. It's just a matter of whether you can pull it off with the street, and he is. And so if you get a
Yeah.
miss, you're not going to see it $75 because really the expectations are not based on
You
numbers.
can
And if
punt
you
it.
get plus
Yeah.
comps, you're going to get jammed on your short. I mean, it's
Yeah.
if he manages to flip this to a plus 3% comp, which is not anything spectacular, but it's conceivable.
Yeah.
That's going to see about a $10 pop in the stock easily.
Okay.
At which
And
point,
Banks,
maybe
what
lean
do you see
against it.
about these? What do you? Yeah, I saw some flickering of Chipotle and Starbucks up there. From a technical standpoint, what do you see?
I've got Chipotle up first. The shorts are right because we're hitting new 2 year lows and taking out support. And my eyes drawn, with deference to William O'Neill, may he rest in peace. The momentum is gone. The last 3 quarters are up 19% earnings percent per share, up 7 and down 3, and that's just a bad place to be. And I haven't heard what the catalyst is to turn this around. So
Right.
I think now you're going into this next area of resistance around 34 or so, and I wouldn't be stunned if it gets there. If earnings don't make a stock go up or make it go down, then what's going to make it go up is a great earnings report, and I don't hear that coming in 90 days. So 34 is the next stopping point for me.
Okay.
Oh,
And what
Starbucks.
about Starbucks?
Yeah, you had it liked whatever the headline was, but didn't like the substance of the call. So you couldn't
Right.
take out this 97.89 level, which is always telling. And this is why I harp on volume. I mean, volume is people voting with their feet. I mean, people said, I love nickel, but I don't like this stock right now, or maybe I don't. I hate this stock, and this is just a sign of the turnaround isn't here yet. It just isn't. And
Yeah.
and the 200 day is at 95 and change. We didn't take that out. So until we take out 95 and change and 97 and change to the upside on big volume, I think this is in the DMZ at best and is a short to 75 at worst.
And I think
All
that I
right.
don't disagree with that. I think what you're seeing on that big ass candle that they painted there was a lot of the aftermarket action they took it higher. Far be it for me to speculate on who's taking it higher in the thinly traded, but they smashed that right away. They kind of just opened it where it was, and before the grown-ups arrived, the grown-ups came in with real volume and just said, we're buying that quarter because I don't want to buy that quarter, and they sold the crap
Right.
out of it. So it's
Right.
I think it deserves to be in no man's land, and I think that's where you end up with. I think the reason it's not 75 already, it's not because he's promising numbers next year, and if you can get away with saying, listen. I'm taking a full 18 months. If it was private Nadine, if you and I were running it, we would do a lot of the same
Yeah.
things he's doing.
Right.
And we'd have the luxury of just kind of making our debt payments, and that would be great.
Right.
But if you can get away with that in a public market, it's a more efficient way to run the company and certainly a better way to turn something around like this. Chipotle, the difference is narrative. I like narrative, technicals, and the financials to all line up. You don't have all three in on really, any of them here,
Yeah.
but as a short with Chipotle, you got all three working in your favor. The fundamentals are getting worse. The story is garbage, and
Right.
it's the technicals are no bueno. So it just looks like kind of a better shorting idea out there. There's a lot of stuff breaking down in consumer land though. We're getting to the have and have nots. I mean, I was popping up Lulu. That's about to have a one handle again. I can't remember the last time that had a one handle. We're seeing stuff that's just breaking. And I think the tastes change, and when they
Yeah.
do, you got to roll with it.
Yeah.
I'm
I
not
can
sure it's the
see
answer for yeah.
on TikTok, I see Lulu and Aritzia getting panned. So,
Panned
so what
Aritzia,
do you?
really.
Yep, getting panned as boring, like boring, office like, not hot anymore. So, what do you think? How much is the I guess the narrative, the hotness of something versus fundamentals of running the business versus the technicals on some of these that you're looking at of saying the haves and have nots? Like, where are we in the
I think
cycle? Like, where are we that what matters right now?
well, speaking to Aritzia in particular, that's kind of what they do is the affordable luxury office wear stuff. So, it's my daughter went in there. She's taking a banking job, and she's like, "This is great." Geez, it's a reasonable
Yeah,
price for stuff that looks good because she's explicitly not looking for anything that exciting. What you're also seeing is they're not a kid anymore, right? Aritzia has spent
yeah,
the last couple years expanding into America for the first time, and everything's kind of the most exciting when it first kind of arrives here.
yeah.
I think with
Right.
Lulu, it's a little different story. I'm saying, Levi had a great quarter. They actually, I think there's something happening in denim without Sydney Sweeney. Now it's going a little crazy. It's
Sure.
gotten a little bonkers, but
Yeah,
their denim is selling well. And it's when you go out to the health clubs and you see the shishi people, Lulu doesn't own the tight market anymore. You used to just see a
yeah.
customer and they would be in Lulu's
That's
and there
what
was a
it.
100% chance they're wearing them. And that they're wearing Aloe now.
Yeah,
The men are wearing Viore. Both those companies are private. That's a bad setup for Lulu if you're trying to, turn around your comps. And they're another one who's blaming the economy. And holy crap, I know the economy is good and bad sometimes, but if you're a retail CEO, man, I'm not investing in farm equipment. I'm not investing in a ski
right.
slope. I don't care about the weather. I don't care about the economy. I don't care about acts of God. I want them to go where the customer is. And so this idea that the customer is terrible and that's why people are going to Viore seems a little weird from me from Calvin McDonald and the rest of the Lulu team. Again,
Yeah,
not the scum of the earth, great company, unbelievable, stuff, but it's Chip Wilson who founded the place, said it years ago. Once you become a store for everyone, there's nowhere to go.
right,
Lulu kind of became a store for everyone, and
right.
it's. I think Aritzia has a lot more runway in terms of the number of stores that they can build in the states. They still aren't really all that penetrated there. The new CEO there, Jennifer Wan, I believe his name, she had a little bit of a learning curve taking over for a giant running that company before, really a
Yeah,
legend in Canadian, if not international retail. But and she's really found her stride. The comps there were numbers like Lulu used to post. You got 19% comps, just kind of bonkers stuff, unsustainable by its very nature. But it's if people want to bet against them. Godspeed on a thinly traded Toronto
yeah.
stock that's posting 19% comps. I wish you all the best.
So what are you
Hey Jeff,
most okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Bakes.
is with Starbucks, is China a potential positive, negative, or neutral?
Them bailing out of it would be a super duper positive. You saw a little bit of a pop in the stock as they started to kind of minimize it. Sales were better than expected there. We haven't seen it not being horrible yet is a beat on the China front, just like everything
Okay.
else that has to do with China at this point. I like that he's talking about divesting of it. I think that that's been just a quagmire that's kind of a legacy of the Howard Schultz era. He wanted to teach China how to caffeinate like Americans do. Nobody's going to caffeinate like Americans like to caffeinate. That's we're the best in the world at buying junk and consuming caffeine. So that's an experiment that they don't make a ton of money there. It's not a huge percentage of what they're doing, but if they got out of it for 7 billion, it would be a positive just because it would more focus is what I want to see from
Right.
Starbucks.
Yeah, it's
When
been a
Howard Schultz
losing
fixed them
area.
right when Schultz fixed them the first time, he went in and just cleaned up the stores. It was not all that different than you have now. He just these stores are a dump. Our stores are absolutely filthy. And went in there. It took him a couple of years, but he made a huge difference. That was back near the financial crisis. One of his first of several comebacks. But that's kind of what it took. He just gave the stores some TLC. He was not as good at food as Nickel is. Nickel has already cleaned up the menu. He's already just improved the experience. And again, it's less about your name on the cup than it is about a management team that's not ticked off to be there. They're not spending other time in union meetings. My God, to get a union at a place like Starbucks, you have to really tick people off, and that's just crazy. And Nickel ended a lot of really expensive initiatives that were moving towards just a full AI experience, and he's defining what the company's going to be. And it's not just going to be again a methadone den where we're feeding people their speed every day, but
Yeah.
we're going to seek a little higher ground. Which I'm not trying to talk you
And
into buying the stock. I'm just saying there's easier shorts out there.
right, right. No, that's why it was a really, really small position because we're like, hey, let's wait on this because it's the duration, that runway that if someone gets a hall pass for a really long time, then doesn't matter, right? But um, 2028 seemed like a long haul pass.
It's super
So
long,
we
and
will
he's
be
got
watching that one.
it's a sandbag haul back. It's
Right.
you
Yeah. It's
ask
kind
for
of like saying,
28,
yeah,
and then
I'm
you
going to
start
lose weight in
delivering
the
the
next
back half
five
of next year.
years. I'm going to lose weight in the next 5 years. Okay. Right. Tell me
Yep,
what you're
yep.
doing tomorrow.
And then you go on a diet and you
Right.
show up thin, and
And
people
then
will
you're
be like,
seeing
"Oh
me
my God, you
eating a
look
chocolate
incredible."
donut. And you're like, what's going on? Right. Well, all right. So
But in
anything else
fairness, I think
today,
it's a big
Mackie?
turnaround.
Yeah. It's going to be a huge
Amazon's
turnaround.
tonight.
But
Amazon's huge tonight, and they report this
already
afternoon. I
up
think they're going to.
several hundred bips today. I think on the back of Meta and Microsoft. But what are you looking for in their print?
I'm looking for third party sales to be strong
Mm,
there. I think that they don't have as much China exposure. In fact, in some ways, they benefit from it at the
okay.
expense of a lot of those third party sellers. Third party is going to be about 38, 39 billion versus like 53 for the
Mm,
actual retail that Amazon does. And because that's such a big chunk of their retail business, it cushions them because for the stuff that they're delivering for third parties, they don't have inventory risk, they don't have import risk, they don't have any of it. They just go to the companies and say, geez, these tariffs are probably hitting you. You better use our web service. We'll save you a ton of money on fulfillment. We're much better at it than you are. We've created basically our own post office. And so you need us. And I think that that's what they'll say for Prime Day. You saw early data with the Prime Day that it
mm,
was a lot of third party stuff. People weren't that excited, but it was the biggest Prime Day experience ever. And that was based on the third party. And so that's their most profitable line of retail. I think that'll be strong. I think web services will be amazing. And that's kind of why they're hired today.
Yeah.
Unless Bezos comes in and sells $10 billion worth of shares, which is entirely possible. That's kind of staring at all-time highs that were made earlier this year, and I think they've earned them. I think that if they come in with a strong quarter and at least a decent outlook, probably better than they're the second largest retailer in America, so it seems silly to say, but retail is really not their bag. They make 50% of their profits from AWS, so
right.
that number should be good. I would expect it to be good. And I think that they were not that strong last quarter. Amazon doesn't usually miss two in a row. They made their bacon since 1997, since the actual, the IPO prospectus saying we don't care what we earn from quarter to quarter, we just don't give a shit. We're going to run it for the long term. So I would expect a lot of investing going on that might cloud sort of the EPS outlook, but I think revenue is going to be strong. I think profitability will be good.
And so let's go back to your point about Amazon, because just there's a nuance to make sure that everybody understands. Today Trump came out and said, those micro uh, purchases, so anything under $800 going to be slapped with the tariff. So kind of walk through who gets hit and why do they not suffer? Just maybe walk through that again.
Okay, so if you're running a small merchant and you use Amazon for your fulfillment, you're the one who pays for that. You're the importer, you're taking it. China's not paying for it. I'm not sure why they keep repeating how these foreign countries are paying for it, but that's not how tariffs work. The
Right.
foreign countries aren't actually taxed by the whims of our president. But I guess if you just repeat it enough, people will believe it. So if you're running the small merchant, you pay those duties. That's up to
Right.
you. If it's you're kind of it really challenges their business model, but it
Right.
doesn't put them straight out of business. And what
Okay.
Amazon's selling is they charge you 15%. That'll be yet another way of eating into the profits of these people who are bringing in smaller orders, strong, like lower, less amount of goods. But that third party business is really robust, and Amazon's really, if you're going to argue that they're a monopoly, which this government doesn't deal in nuances, it's been kind of mumbled about for a long time. But it would be that Amazon is really the best at shipping. They're so much better at shipping than anyone else, and providing that back end service that they control a lot more goods than just what they sell. Now, in terms of the lower goods,
So
they
I'm a
operate at a
vendor.
scale just
So,
like
so I'm a vendor though, and now my cost just went up. So what am I changing to work more with Amazon, or is it, more about just I lost profits? Is there anything I'm changing? Is there anything Amazon's doing to make my life better?
you might go out of business. Amazon's the only one that can improve your life because they're going to control a big portion of your cost. And so
Okay.
they can do that via partnerships. They can do it through paybacks. They can change the way they're charging in a lot of different ways. But generally speaking, because they are kind of the only show in town, I mean, you're going to use UPS or FedEx for whatever reason, they've never developed back end services to take advantage of e-commerce the way you would have thought. Amazon just frankly owns that business. It was such a ridiculous long shot that they would, we're going to create our own FedEx. That seemed bonkers 15 years ago, but
Right.
now they're offering same day shipping. So if you're a vendor, it's for sure a challenge. It for sure hits your profits. But Amazon's not who you cut. You start rethinking what your product lines are, and you think about
Got
who
it.
your
Yeah, you
suppliers
might
are,
shift.
none of which is
Right.
Amazon's problem.
Right, right. Yeah, so it doesn't hit Amazon, but it does hit the provider, and so they got to manage their margins better. They have to deal with maybe the product SKU breadth or whatever else, the complexity that they're dealing with, or as you're talking
Right.
about, maybe sourcing elsewhere, right? Okay, so
And
that's
Amazon
helpful to
controls,
know.
75%. I mean, they own such a huge chunk of the online retail business that the last thing you're going to do if you're struggling that way is to pull your goods from the biggest store online. It's would in fact force some of these people into Amazon's arms. Just say, we've been trying to do it ourselves. We've been trying to build out our own fulfillment order service, and it seemed like something we could do, but instead I'm going to rip those costs out and just pay Amazon the 15% fee. It's not a great scenario for them. The small retailers, the small vendors are for sure the ones getting the most hammered on things like that. And it's
Right,
really arguably kind of the most poorly or not thought through at all aspect of these tariffs is that, it's not a problem for Amazon. Walmart on their call first quarter said, listen, however this works out, we
right,
don't really lose. It's just not a thing we're going to lose. And if Walmart's big enough that they can really jam it to the suppliers, and big enough with 500,000 SKUs or whatever the hell they have, that they're going to raise the cost by a penny all over the store, as opposed to making it so obvious as
right,
marking up their T-shirts from $4 to 8, which is what they would cost. And they're the ones that are just going to go to Vietnam and say, "Listen, you have 8
right,
factories here that all make shoes. We're going to use the
right,
one not right down the street if you won't give us
right,
concessions."
right.
So what the
So,
government is doing for the big companies is providing just an
yeah,
umbrella. It's
right.
you can see as well as we do what's going on. Therefore, we're paying you less, and they're going to repeat that over and over.
So let me go to Amazon. and connected to Microsoft because I think some people are a little bit surprised at how much CapEx on data centers and the like that the company is going to spend. So let's say Amazon comes out and they say, you thought CapEx was Y, it's going to be 2Y, right? Does it matter? Do people get excited? Are people upset that free cash flow is being spent that way? How are you thinking about that aspect of what could be reported?
I think about it a little different than a lot of folks do. I get more concerned, like the Google reaction when their capex
Right,
is going to be high and people try to take the stock lower. When you don't want to invest in Google is when they're just doing those moonshots. Like when they just
right,
had this, here's a bunch of random crap we're investing in and we're just chucking billions at it and they'll be a good idea. These are,
okay,
these companies got big because they're extraordinary allocators of capital,
okay,
as evidenced by
right,
Zuck. He made a mistake on the metaverse, and man, their name is still Meta, but they got out of that
yeah,
really fast. Screw that. This is where the future is, and this is where we're going. Amazon, as we just alluded to, they are the best allocators of capital on a corporate level, they arguably ever. I mean, they're absolutely extraordinary at finding the next opportunity and building themselves out. This is a bookstore that is now doing
right,
same day shipments of groceries in 90% of the country. That's just a
right,
holy crap, didn't see that coming type of development from, again, a bookstore.
right. So, all right, let me get to Bakes here. So, Bakes, technically, what are you finding the most interesting, either out of the names we've been talking about or what's on your list?
I have three on my list, and the first is super microcomputers. I know some of my colleagues are going to, almost having a
We're
medical issue.
chuckling. Go ahead. We're chuckling, silently chuckling.
Yeah, no, no, no. And I knew you would, but
Yeah,
don't shoot the messenger.
yeah,
But I've got three cautionary tales here: super microcomputer, SMCI. If you're short, you really have to make sure that you convince 91 million shares, 25% in 2 days to cover short, that you're right. And the
right,
volume is telling one, not you, but telling a short that uh, with all of the problems they had, accounting and otherwise, this looks bullish. And if it takes out this 66 level here,
yeah,
watch what happens when the margin calls happen and people say, "Wait a minute, I got to cover and I'm done."
right,
And so I know people that have their heels dug in, but don't let intellect get in the way of risk
math,
management.
right,
And this has got room to go. This has got room to go. And I used to, if it was 10% short, I would get cautious and kind of go
yes.
find some other places. But when I
Something
see
else. Yeah, I'm with you
25,
on that. Once you hit the 10, you got to start looking elsewhere and say, everybody knows it. They're on the same side of the boat, and any water comes in is going to sink my side of the boat, not the other side of the boat.
yeah. So
Right.
that's short squeeze cautionary tale number one. The next
Okay.
one is a Jeff Mackey special, and this
Right.
is Peloton. And Peloton's is 71 million shares, 19% of the float, and call it 6 days to cover, depending on what
Wow.
volume you want to use. UBS came out yesterday and clearly surprised some people. Earnings are coming up in a week or so. Uh, Jeff has forgotten more about the fundamentals about this than I know, but I wouldn't be surprised that a UBS analyst got some maybe a second Manhattan in the CFO like the old days, said the quarter's going to be okay, and we're going to squeeze some shorts and have some fun with this.
Yeah.
And getting from 721 to the, you know, 10 or so recent high doesn't seem outlandish to me.
No. And this Bakes is a huge quarter. I was surprised by the upgrade as well. Just given the timing of it, given the fact that they would come out a week ahead of time,
Right.
it's a
Exactly.
confident call, suspiciously confident for those of us inclined to be suspicious about such things. But it was an aggressive one. This is a critical kind of period for them. They're in the middle of turning around, but the bullish case for them, we got about 3 million users. They're incredibly loyal. And what UBS is saying is they can start kind of inching those prices up. it becomes cash flow positive pretty fast. The users that they have, it's decidedly not a fad stock, and people are, who work out on it are loyal, and they work out on it, and they really like their bikes, and this is just how they exercise, and pry it out of my cold dead hands. Now I
Hmm.
know, I'm biased because I work out on it literally every day, but it's a nice service, a great service, and if they
Mm,
raised my price by $1 a month, $2 a month, it would make a big deal to them and almost no difference to me. It's
right.
not about whether they're selling new bikes. It's not about capturing new customers. It's about kind of retaining that loyal base. They turn cash flow positive. They're going to turn, possibly profitable this year. It becomes a pretty easy takeout idea. It's you have a few different companies out there. Stitch Fix. There's a lot of companies out there that are getting very close to a inflection period where they're going to start earning money. They're going to start becoming viable businesses, as opposed to just losing more at a slower rate. So a lot of companies
Mm,
that have slowed the descent but haven't quite turned positive yet. Peloton's financials could turn positive relatively easy. Another company that was pretty poorly run before. um, as a user, you can see them sort of playing with some of the levers that they have on the cost side. How many live classes are we going to offer? What do people really want out there? But they've really stripped out a lot of kind of the sillier, expensive type of things that they were doing. I'd love to see them ditch retail. That would be great. I don't think they're making any money on their clothing.
mm,
I think there's still ways that can save costs. The new CEO is kind of in the pocket, or at least he's an extension of the board. Once that
okay.
board took over from the last CEO, the company really started turning around. At least, and that's where he bought him
So
like
would
at
you
three or
buy it?
so.
You hear this,
Um,
you hear the UBS is, would you buy it before the quarter?
I wouldn't buy it for the quarter. I'm terrified. I'm long it already. I bought it a
Okay,
while ago. I mean, so
okay,
it's at lower prices.
okay.
So it's. I guess I am, slightly
You hold your
emboldened, or at
nose.
least less terrified, or at least like I'm least inclined to hedge it. More inclined to kind of suicide it and hold my nose and just stay long. Again, it's a hard quarter for them. This is their typically their
Mm,
lowest engagement, highest churn quarter because people go
okay,
outside to
okay,
exercise.
okay,
So it's for pretty obvious reasons. But if they can get through this, then you're into fall. Fall's great for them.
okay.
It's hey, you like running in the slush, you like riding your bike through mud
Right,
puddles and
right,
just
right.
grimness.
Hmm.
Probably not as much. And just so why don't we help you stay in shape over the winter?
Okay. All right. What else, Banks?
So
What else you got?
when the fundamentals and the technicals come together, that's great.
Yeah,
And then you say, oh no, by the way, there's 19% of the float is short, and they're betting against you. And when we've all been on the wrong side of short squeezes. It's not fun. And a big liquid $7 stock can be a big liquid $10 stock without too much trouble, in my opinion. All right,
all
one
right.
more.
I like that one.
Um, I thought you might. This is tip of the hat to David Maris. Uh,
Okay.
he's been he's been on this since he said the other on the show yesterday,
Since
which is
since
phenomenal, by
Moses,
the
right?
way.
Since Moses, or when?
Sorry.
Since Moses was alive. Yeah. Go ahead.
Um, he's been here since 12. People, are saying, oh, I'm right here on this gap down because of,
Yeah.
the Lilly or Novo deal breaking down. But, this is a wedge the way I look at it. And, you can get kind of carried away. So I don't get too, I don't treat these things as gospel, but that's a wedge, a damn big one with a 40-point swing. Rule of thumb from the apex, you can go up 40 points. That's $100 in round terms, and I know that's going to make people's hair stand on fire. But you got to admit when you're wrong, and if you think it's a short at 20, and the market is telling you it's $69, then you got a problem. We're approaching this all-time high here at 72 or so.
Right.
Watch what happens with a close above that. Oh, and boys and girls, 68 million shares, 35% of the float is short. Probably going
Wow.
down as we
Right. Right.
go down as we speak. And I think that you get a close above 72.98. I think it is. I'm too vain to put on my glasses. And the volume is monstrous. So there's something going on around here, Buffalo Springfield, and I think this looks pretty damn bullish. And Maris has been here through thick and thin, through the good, the bad, and the ugly, and made people a lot of money. So Hims is the third short squeeze today, and stay tuned, because it looks to me like there's more to come. You've got earnings coming up in the next 4 or 5 days,
Right.
and it looks to me like it's going to be a damn good one. So if you're short, I'd be
Lots of
real.
actionable ideas today. I love it. So, cautious on the Starbucks short, more confident on the Chipotle short. We're talking about Amazon later today. You had Hims, you had Peloton, so lots of good stuff here from Bakes as well. Very actionable day. So thank you guys. I know that they were coming up here on 45 after the hour, and people only have so much tolerance for time. So again, it is July 31st, 2025. So many actionable ideas. So replay this episode and get ready. Jeff Macke, Kevin Biggs Baker, Nadine Terman here on Wall Street Beats. Subscribe, and we will see you back tomorrow.
See you, folks. Jen, thanks as always.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thanks,
I
folks.
got a
Take it
hot
easy.
meeting. Take care
Bye-bye.
now. Thank you very much.